Yeah.
Hey, how are you? Good to see you.
I should have brought Molly earlier, and then you
I also brought my butter tea.
I think we're reading this. Sitting down
Ready now. All right. Here we go. We're going to start our intros of note. Hi, everyone. My name is Maggie. I'm the Events and Marketing person here at Flyleaf. Thanks for coming to this event tonight. Just a few things I'm going to say. Thanks for coming. Thanks for purchasing items from us, books from us, to support your community programming. Without supporting your local bookstore, we can't have programs like this, so it really is important to shop local, support local, keep jobs in the community, so that we can have talks like this sort of thing. So thank you so much for coming tonight. And all of these authors' books, we have them on sale and at the front on table 20. So yes, if you'd like to support these authors and support us, you can do that. So there, and I'm going to let Allison Hart take over from now and talk a little bit more about the program and the authors that are going to be speaking today. So thanks again for coming.
Yeah, well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being here. First, a huge thank you to Flyleaf Books and Maggie for hosting us tonight. There are few better places to make good trouble than in a bookstore, and this one in particular is so special to our community. Tonight's event is called Hostile Work Environment, and it's a May Day reading in honor of May 1st, International Workers' Day, a holiday born from the labor movement's long fight for the 8-hour workday, for safe conditions, and for the radical idea that working people deserve dignity. That fight, as we all know, is not over. Today, thousands of North Carolina teachers marched on Raleigh, demanding that lawmakers choose kids over corporations. Several districts, including ours, canceled classes today so that their teachers could attend. Understandable, given that the average teacher salary in North Carolina is 43rd in the nation. Across the country, workers are striking, marching, and organizing. This is what May Day looks like in 2026. This reading is organized in conjunction with Fall of Freedom, a national grassroots movement and an urgent call to the arts community to unite in defiance of the authoritarian forces sweeping this country. Artists are a threat to American fascism because art is how we remember who we are, how we bear witness, and how we refuse. Tonight, 4 readers will read work that takes on bad bosses, corporate greed, the hustle, the grind, wealth inequality, and the long American tradition of working people getting the short end of the stick. As Maggie mentioned, their books are for sale, and I encourage you to pick up a copy if you haven't already, and I bet they would be very happy to sign one for you. One quick note, a portion of tonight's programming will be live streamed to Follow Freedom's Instagram and YouTube. So in a moment, you'll see me quickly welcome that audience over there. With that said, let's get started. I'm going to introduce each author as they come up. So our first reader tonight is Melissa Falavino. Melissa is the author of Hemlock and the essay collection Tomboyland, named a Best Book of 2020 by NPR, New York Public Library, Oprah Magazine, Electric Literature, and Day Beautiful, and recipient of a 2021 award for Outstanding Literary Achievement from the Wisconsin Literary Association. Her writing has appeared in Esquire, Paris Review, Kenyon Review, Literary Hub, Viz Magazine, Bitch Magazine, and Brooklyn Rail, among others. Born and raised in small-town Wisconsin and a longtime resident of Greenpoint, Brooklyn, she teaches creative writing at the University of North Carolina and lives in the woods outside Chapel Hill. Melissa. It's time. Okay, so if you're just joining us, oh, more mic. Yes, okay. If you're just joining us from the Fall Freedom live stream, hello. We're at Flyleaf Books in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and this is Hostile Work Environment, a May Day reading. We'll start with Melissa Falladino, author of the novel Hemlock and the essay collection Tomboyland.
Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody out there watching the live stream. So good to be here. Thank you, Allison, for organizing this. Thank you, Flyleaf, for hosting. Thank you all for being here on a Friday night. Happy May Day. I'm going to read two pieces tonight, two short pieces. The first is from my novel Hemlock, which came out in January. And then I'm going to read a brand new essay that is actually a work in progress that I'm still working on about hustle culture and trying to break the cycle of inherited hustle by staying where you are. But I'll start with a short section from Hemlock. They talked about leaving all the time. They both lived in New York for 15 years, since their early 20s. For a while, Sam had liked her life in the city. She had a job at a magazine and liked the work she did. Exacting and precise. There was a right and a wrong, an answer to every question. It was her job to fix things, to find the broken parts and put them back together, make each story better. She loved the feeling of making something, of sitting in the office late in the evenings at each issue's close, then holding the finished product in her hands. She felt like she was a part of something solid, something she could touch, something stable and predictable, a kind of order, she supposed, in a life that had seen very little of it. But outside the office, she often felt like she was pretending. At cocktail receptions and fundraisers she attended for work, she felt like a fraud. She met rich people whose only job seemed to be attending such parties, and the well-groomed young artists and writers born to them. Kids Sam's age who never had to worry about debt or what comes next. You have no idea where I come from, she found herself thinking sometimes, as she stood around a gallery on her third glass of free wine, talking to some famous poet or finance person or wealthy donor. You have no idea where I come from. In recent years, it had become a kind of mantra. She repeated it in her head, sometimes even whispered it aloud, mouthing the words like song lyrics on her walk from the train to the office downtown, past so many people in expensive suits. Back home when she was young, Sam didn't think much about money. Most of her family and friends lived in apartments and duplexes and trailer parks, but her parents owned a house. It was small, but it was theirs. They worked hard, physical jobs that would bend their backs with age, to give her the kind of life they'd never known. She knew she was lucky, that to not think too much about money was a privilege. But in New York, she thought about it all the time. It was impossible not to. It existed on the surface of everything, and it ran deeper. It was inherent, inherited, something that lived in your blood. It came in the form of education and family lines, the way you spoke and the way you held your body at parties, what you did for work, if you worked at all. Sam was hired at $32,000 a year and had to bartend at night to make rent. Everything about her gave her away. Her old blazers from H&M, her hesitation over which fork to use at a gala dinner, when she dropped a G from a word in conversation, when she turned down invitations to fancy restaurants and bars, knowing she couldn't afford her share. She had never felt so broke. Living in the city is so hard, her boss would say, talking about his kids' private school tuition or his summer house on Shelter Island. And Sam would have the sudden and specific urge to pick the stapler off his desk and throw it as hard as she could at his clean, waspy face. The city did that to you. It made you love and hate in equal parts. You loved all the things the city could afford, its museums and restaurants and music and art, its lights and life and possibility. But that word, afford, was key. It was a place that made you want. And want became a way of life. It became fuel, like food. You never stopped being hungry. To exist this way had begun to make Sam itch. It made her want to peel off her skin, unzip the thin carapace in which she lived, step out of it, and start over once again. So then she goes to the woods of Wisconsin and gets really feral, and a lot of weird stuff starts happening. So get a copy of the book if you want to find out what happens next. Now I'm going to read a short piece from a much longer piece that I'm working on that I think will be in my next book, which will be another essay collection. It's called Striver. In the new yard, there's a garden. Or there's a stretch of land that will be a garden. That's the plan anyway. The yard is less a yard and more a clearing in the trees, mostly pine, with very little grass, mostly moss and clover. It's a kind of terrain I've never known. The ground is soft and spongy, dotted with mushrooms when it rains. Beneath the surface, there's no black Midwestern soil, the land I know best, but the hard red clay of the South. In my mind, a bounty stretches across this space. Fruits and vegetables, herbs and greens, lush and alive. In my mind, I dig in the dirt and bring armfuls to work, to neighbors and students and friends. In my mind, I harvest through late autumn because things grow long here, or so I'm told. I haven't planted anything yet. I still need to figure out where the garden will go, where the light hits longest, what can thrive in this ground. I plan and I plot, research natives and prowl the garden store, but buy nothing. Still, I'm hoping that here, in this new place, something will grow. There's a particular brand of person who's always moving forward, propelled by better alternative futures and better alternative lives, who's so busy looking to the horizon and working toward what comes next, they're never fully present in the place they are now, and rarely ever stay. In the long game lie known as the American dream, we call this person a striver, a struggler, a hustler, a fighter, who pushes toward that fuzzy, hallowed goalpost in the distance when they will struggle and hustle and strive no more. Never quite learning, or perhaps worse, knowing full well that the shimmering image on the horizon is just a mirage. This is who I come from, and this is who I am. After a life of renting, my partner and I recently bought a house. It was a small miracle, considering the market and our general lack of money, and my general ambivalence around owning anything, not least something valuable that might be taken away. But we got lucky. It's a small place on 2 acres of woods, not far from the university where I teach. When my parents came down from Wisconsin, they brought plants, hostas and black-eyed Susans, purple coneflower and wild geranium, dug up from my mom's gardens, which are massive and lush and surround the house where I grew up. Together, my mom and I planted them all. None of these plants are doing well. The hostas were chewed up by deer. The black-eyed Susans drowned in a flood. The coneflower shriveled to black. My mom insists they'll survive. Sleep, creep, leap, she tells me. That 3-year cycle of a perennial's life, the process of getting rooted and returning. But I worry all these pine trees mean too much shade. I worry the clay won't let them grow. I worry that nothing will take hold, and I wonder, not for the first time, if it's worth trying to plant anything at all. To strive is to endeavor, to contend, to devote serious effort or energy to struggle in opposition. From the root, strife, a bitter and sometimes violent act of conflict or dissension, a fight. Synonyms include try, attempt, and, hilariously, essay. The word in its verb form is at the top of all my nonfiction syllabi. To essay, I tell my students, is to attempt, to muddle through a question or problem or moment, to try to find your way. As a writer who identifies first as an essayist, who in fact moved across the country to the most expensive city in the country for grad school to become a master of essays, one could argue that I got a degree in striving. That degree, it should be noted, is terminal. And considering the fact that I went into debt to get it, a debt that has more than doubled since I graduated, The irony is not lost on me. My father was a striver. Maybe he still is. Even now, in semi-retirement, for at 73, he still isn't able to stop working completely. He's built of anxiety, a brain that races at night and keeps him awake, worried about what might come. I am this way too. My mom, meanwhile, tells me to relax, to live in the now. She speaks sage-like in aphorisms like this sometimes, and I can't always tell if she believes what she's saying. But after receiving a cancer diagnosis last year, I think in this case she does. I know she wants me to. Either way, I'm trying to listen. I'm trying to take her words to heart. We like to think of ambition as a good thing. People who are ambitious or driven are a good kind of people, serious and disciplined and propelled by the promise of hard work. For most of my life, I've been called these words. I've called myself these words too, worn them like a badge. When I talk to my students, many of whom are first generation like me, they seem much wiser about work and the want factory of capitalism than I ever was. To be a striver is to be, in their vernacular, a try-hard, which in the Gen Z kingdom seems to be one of the greatest insults of all. There's more to life than work, they say. The institution won't love you back. I nod vigorously, tell them they're right. But as an elder millennial born of working class boomers, born of the so-called silent generation, a lot of them farmers and factory workers who toiled mercilessly and stoically until their bodies were busted. How do I pull my own bootstraps down? When the hustle has been inherited, tended inside you like an invasive vine, how do you hack it away? Can you pull it from its roots? Can you ever really be rid of it? Do you ever really want to? What if you're so used to the stranglehold, you're afraid to loosen its grip, afraid of what might happen if you finally let yourself breathe? Thanks.
That was great, Lisa. Thank you. Our next reader, if you're cool with it, is Jamila. Jamila F. Dallas is a multidisciplinary writer, curator, art collector, and scholar based in Durham. With experience in UX writing, academia, marketing and professional communications, art journalism, and nonprofit organizations, she brings fresh perspectives and critical insights to strategy, design, and copy. Her first full-length poetry collection is Encounters for the Living and the Dead. Jamila received her PhD in English from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill in May 2016.
Okay,
That's great.
all right. I'll try not to run into it. As a multi-hyphenate person, I think it's clear that I also work a lot. And I also have crazy student loan debt, so I can definitely, so thanks to everyone for being here. I'm gonna read poems from my collection. And when I was thinking about the topic, I was like, how do I make some of these poems work? And I thought about it, and I was like, oh yeah. So I'm starting with ancestors, and this poem is for the author Mary Prince, but I'm also thinking about my own ancestors who, some of them were enslaved, and my grandparents were descendants of enslaved people. My dad's dad was born in 1898, so it was very close to that time, that period of history. Not just the sting of the whip, the nothing-colored blue of the ocean, or the spaces so dark and putrid and red, black, brown, flesh-smelling, or thrust of the men all the she's were forced to bathe, and the children all the she's were forced to birth, bury, and see carted off because mistress hates that bitch with olive skin and thick, silky plaits. But the time before the ocean, are memories of past lives, memories of ancestors' lives? Are my offerings enough? What do our ancestors want? And this next series of poems are all about imagining a place without oysters. A big chunk of the book in the middle, the bête de la mer, the beast of the sea, takes us through sort of like an oceanic journey. There are a lot of oysters. And I'm going to read the first one of this one, and I think maybe the last one of this 3-part series. But in imagining a world in a place without oysters, it means that we haven't done our job to make sure that our oceans are clean, our waterways are working. And in both of these poems I'm going to read, there is sort of like an undertone of what happens when development comes in and takes away our spaces that we've grown to love. So there's a place without oysters. It's also an acrostic poem for a piece that's up at the ACMA. Displacement unsettles, a refugee crisis, unrepentant developers, excess, foreshadowing what? An end, the end? Butchers will butcher, body, land, no escape, disgust. Things nameless, unnameable, no oysters or fat chickens, no hot oven bread, a refugee crisis, unrepentant despots, excess, foreshadowing death. The sea has swallowed the shore. Hungry, relentless, unrepentant, no oysters or fat shells, no hot yolky sun, but charred, spent flesh. Always a refugee crisis, always unrepentant escapes, always empty pantries. And now there's a place without oysters. And this third poem in the series is called No Space for Your Ghost. It's for a lover of mine who passed away. And the last place that we had dinner together, the last date we had, is a place that doesn't exist anymore because developers decided to buy it and they didn't like that there was a restaurant there. And now it's just empty. Of course, I ordered oysters raw. You frowned lovingly, and I reached for your hand. Across from us, a happy friend, that I found someone. You and I am gorged with desire. The oyster slipped down my throat, and later I collapsed, not into your arms because you were busy, had things to do, but into tears. So what? It was complicated, always was. But now the thought of the hand I held on to, knobby, veiny, forever gone, and a place I can never return, is now development weighs assets, value collapses beauty, resilience fails, and I am left with the edge of meaning, tongue caught grasping toward memory and briny, tender flesh. No room, ghostly empty, no space for your ghost, only in no space I once ate oysters. And the reason why he always had stuff to do is because he was always working. I mean, like, we'd stay out until like 1, 2 in the morning, and he'd go home and work. And I was like, really? This next series of poems, there's 4 of them. I don't think I'm going to read all 4 because I want you to buy the book. But I'm going to read the first and the last of the series. And I don't always read these. I'm starting to read them a little bit more often. I think, Melissa, you've heard one of these or 2 of these. But these are called Bad Oyster. And when I started thinking about like how these poems came to be, one, it was like working through trauma. But it was from this trip that I went on in 2016. And it's my first time overseas. You know, I was a newly minted doctor of philosophy. And I wanted to go to France. It was this thing that I've been wanting to do for a big chunk of my life. And I couldn't really afford it. And so I had this lover who was like, get your ticket, come stay with me, I'll treat you like a princess. And, you know, because I was looking at a very low starting salary where I was going to be a visiting assistant professor, I was like, yeah, let's take this. And, you know, the epigraph says a little bit. This is from M.F.K. Fisher's Consider the Oyster. And the epigraph is a phrase, and live to tell it. Bad oyster. The stench of shit, and suddenly you're in the 19th arrondissement penthouse, sandwiched between dancing lights, orbs of splendor diffused with tears on the wall of his palm. Black bud, Was it sharp mustard, grains, glass, blood, black caviar, Walt Whitman? Her dancing lights, Eiffel Tower, searchlight fear could illuminate your naked, abandoned flank one day. Walt Whitman, caviar, black, blood, glass, grains, mustard, sharp? It was blood, black. Suddenly, the stench of shit and the bad oyster, beautiful and unassuming, until you gulp it down, second-guessing the dog shit that must be sandwiched between your foot and bar rail. And you wait, hope you can keep it down till morning. I'm going to skip ahead to the fourth one. 7 years later, and there's no fear, but there's memory. Tactile, slick, gummy, beyond expiration, a foul place now just a midden of memory. But back then, a place where he tells lies and I believe him. Wait for him to pass out, gather my things, I shake, worry I can't be too quiet, but I make it to the elevator. And why I press so many buttons, I don't know, but it's the only thing that makes sense. 7 years later, and there's only the fear of sepsis, a slow, painful, gastronomical death, and I imagine my body at home in a bone-colored midden, a record of 12,000 years of love and death and hunger and desire. Filtering memory through my gills, I feel the stuck pieces as they wash over me, cloudy, mud-colored water and fishy poison. But I know better than to let it all in now. 7 years ago, and now I can hardly believe I've let that bad oyster go down. Threatening collapse, failure, bile, and putrefying things. But I get out, wake up in the morning. This last one I'm going to read is a little short one for my mom. And my mom, she never had like a kind of traditional profession. She was a homemaker, and I should say that is a traditional profession, but I guess now that's like kind of like going back or something to like the way that things used to be. But my dad was very insistent that she not have like a career, and that she could stay home and take care of us, my sister and I. And when my dad was dying, and my mom was doing things a little differently, everything was in her control. My dad's hospice bed was in the living room, and I insisted on opening the curtains. They always kept the curtains closed, but I was like, you know, these are my dad's last days on earth. Let's open the windows. You know, let's open the curtains so he can get some sunlight. And my mom came to me and she was like, Jamila, did you see? There's deer. There's just deer in the yard. And I'm like, yeah, that happens, you know? And she's like, wow. And she was so obsessed with these deer. And I was like, why are they such a big deal? And in her like 70 plus years, she had never seen deer just in the yard, which was so bizarre to me. So this is for my mom, a domestic worker's prayer. Her mother was a domestic worker. Fuchsia field azaleas and emerald leaves. I thought I'd left the garden. I thought Eden died with that tree. What gatekeeper keeps rules and order here in this place, lush, ancient, and hot enough to melt the wax that fills your white-tailed visionary dreams? Thanks.
That was beautiful, Jamila. So our next reader is Joanna Pearson. She's the author of 2 short story collections and a book of poetry. Her stories have appeared in the Best American Short Stories, the Best American Mystery and Suspense, and many other publications. She has won the Drew Hines Literature Prize and been a finalist for the Shirley Jackson Awards, the Janet Heidinger Kafka Prize, and the Virginia Literary Awards. She lives in North Carolina, where she works as a psychiatrist. Bright and Tender Dark is her debut novel. Joanna. Woo.
Can you hear me? Is this good?
Turn it up.
Hold it up. Yeah. All right. How's that? Is that?
I think that's
Can y'all hear me?
the highest we can possibly.
Okay. Shout out to Allison Hart, because I feel like, what a gift to literary North Carolina she has been. What a dear friend. She's amazing writer, and I don't know, I just feel like she makes things happen. Speaking of work, she makes things happen. So, special shout out. And of course, Flyleaf. We love Flyleaf. So, I'm going to read a little bit from an older story, and it's a story that's from my very first collection, Every Human Love. I bet Flyleaf would be willing to order a copy for you if you were interested. It's one that came out in mid-2019, so I never got to read it around town quite as much as I might have liked. And so I'm going to read from the beginning of a story called Wages. Raise your hand if you know what a resident is, or a resident physician. Are we all watching The Pit? So y'all, okay. All right. Y'all know what that is. Okay. Residents, they work a lot. That's the main character in the story. Eventually, Julia is taking things from the hospital, not because she needs them, but because it seems like the hospital owes her. It begins with the good ballpoint pens she finds in the emergency department administrative offices, which are vacant on the weekends and left generously unlocked. She genuinely needs a pen the first time she grabs it one Saturday shift, but afterward, the pens are superfluous, a bad habit. Next, it's an array of hospital toiletries, unscented medical-grade soap and deodorant, bleak, unbranded toothpaste, flimsy toothbrushes for people on death's doorstep, people for whom having teeth hardly matters. She discovers a stash of mesh underwear and diaper-sized pads for women who've just given birth. She takes a few of these too. The compression stockings she accumulates actually come in handy on night shifts. She takes one of every variety of K-cup coffee stocked in the nurse's break room, even though she has no use for dark roast or decaf. She's a collector. She lines up K-cups along her windowsill at home like Hummel figurines. It's like the hospital is paying her back for lost hours of sunshine, lost minutes of freedom. The rest of the weekend world is outside laughing and tossing frisbees, popping caps off ice-cold beers, but she is trapped here. And she is making up for it in prostate cancer awareness lanyards, pilfered packets of Splenda, and Dyer all-purpose body wash. She is compensating herself with bluish hospitality candies and pink ribbon key pulls with tiny packets of lemon juice and plastic wrapped graham crackers and squirt packs of French's mustard. She has neither the time nor the energy to go buy toilet paper, but that's okay. The hospital is paying her back in toilet paper too. At home, she curls up in front of the fireside light of her laptop screen, streaming online television, wrapped in the bland familiarity of a hospital blanket. Her two worlds are merging, becoming one and the same. The differences are insignificant. The generic medical shampoo doesn't even lather, but she uses it anyway. She has the lank, dull hair of the infirm, and somehow this seems correct. Instead of bedroom shoes, I really went in hard on this story. Instead of bedroom shoes, she slides around the cracked linoleum floor of her kitchen in disposable surgical booties. She's collecting Hotel Flotsam from the world's worst hotel. Once Mike comes to her apartment and seeing the K-cups lining the windowsill, her bathroom stocked with maternity pads, the little bottles of medical toiletries dotting every available surface like sad votives, he looks away quickly. in such a way that she knows it's a kind of sickness. There are framed photos from Julia's old life, a life during which she laughed and went to weddings and let herself be swept backward into a kiss, and she realizes she doesn't want Mike to see these either. After that, she doesn't invite him over again. When her text pager goes off again around midnight, it reads simply, "Doctor, please come to 5th floor." There's no indication of what's going on, no decipherable tone. Julia sighs and enters the stairwell, which has the familiar chlorine-y smell and bad lighting of an indoor swimming pool. As she climbs, her pockets make a shush-shushing sound because they are, of course, stuffed with individually wrapped straws and mini packets of Oreos. Lots of patients are detoxing on the 5th floor. Every now and then, someone starts to go into bad alcohol withdrawal. These episodes shouldn't come on unpredictably, but sometimes it seems like they do. The rough-looking guy with rock-solid vitals, who was previously sullen and calm, is now racked with chills and fever, vomiting, blood pressure all over the place. When this happens, she is the one supposedly in charge, and it is terrifying. Opening the locked door to the unit, she sees many of the patients clad in hospital gowns or still up, gathered around the TV in the common room. She can hear explosions in a car crash as they gaze into the saintly glow. Julia makes her way back behind the nurses' station. Several nurses and techs are clustered there. "Thanks for coming, Doc," a large woman in pink scrub says. Julia thinks her name is Marie. "We had an incident. Need to notify the MD. Marie looks to a colleague and clears her throat. 2 patients were inappropriate. I may edit this slightly given our audience. The new patient, Jones, gave Hinsey a special attention moment behind the trash can. Deirdre, the tech finishes. It's different if you get the book. You can see it. Her eyes crinkle with amusement. In the common room, while everyone else was watching the movie, I thought Hinsey was on constant observation. He was. Marie looks meaningfully at her colleague. Frank here was supposed to be watching him. What should I do about it? Julia asks. They all look at her. Marie, with her braids and cheerful pink fingernails, laughs. Julia feels the muscles of her face tighten into a humorless expression. She forces an awkward grimace in response. "We've already separated them," Marie says. "We just had to let you know. Write an incident report." "Thanks," Julia says, rubbing her temples with the pads of her fingers. "Love is strange," Roberto, another nurse, says in a tone suitable for sage advice. Special attention in the common room," Deirdre adds, sighing. "People get lonely," Frank says, shrugging. They all laugh good-naturedly like he's offered a joke. A little bit more. Julia had been lonely when she first met Mike. She'd been in a pit of loneliness, a tunnel, a World War I style trench of it. She'd been dizzyingly surrounded by others during that initial period of stunned grief, but it was the long stretch afterward that got you. It was the week after week, the plain old workaday loneliness. That was what built up around you, day after day, like so many shovelfuls of dirt. That's where she'd been when she first saw Mike. They were standing in line together at Subway, the only option for food in the hospital after midnight. Julia had noticed his smallness and his quick, thin fingers worrying his pager. He had the delicate, precise features of a pretty girl. He had the pale mustache and buzz cut of a white rapper. He was not her type. Julia had been aware of herself looming, large and galumphing, in line behind him, all unwashed hair and oily forehead. At first, she'd assumed he was a resident like herself, but then she saw transport written on his ID badge. He looked up at her as if aware that she'd been studying him. "What kind of sandwich are you getting?" he asked. "I don't know," she said, "turkey on wheat." She was wondering now about his blue scrubs. There was a whole color-coded hierarchy to the hospital, like the Elizabethan sumptuary laws. Transport wore purple. This was a step above environmental services, who wore light tan. Someone threw up, he said, as if reading her mind, and the machine was out. You should try Combo 3, it's good. Good deal too. I'll stop there.
Joanna. Okay, our last reader is Jared Lemus. He's a writer of short fiction whose stories have appeared in or are forthcoming in The Atlantic, Story, The Kenyon Review, among other places. A Latin writer, Lemus has been a Tin House Scholar and Colgate Writers Conference Fellow. He holds an MFA from the University of Pittsburgh and is visiting writer at UNC Chapel Hill. Jared.
Thank you so much for being here on your Friday. I love the prompt for this because this is what I talk to my students about a lot, two of whom are here today. But I didn't even offer like bonus points, they just came on their own. And I talk about jobs and just how important they are because it's what we spend most of our waking life doing. And so when I sit down to write, if I know what my character's doing for more than half of the time they're awake, then I feel like I know them personally. I've had a lot of shitty jobs. My friends have had a lot of shitty jobs. And so I love this prompt because if I know anything, it's shitty jobs. All right, this is called Whistle While You Work. The job started at 5:30 in the morning. The crew was me, George, and Shauna, and we were in charge of 2 buildings connected by an awning. The goal was to constantly look busy, emptying trash cans, mopping floors, and putting out wet floor signs, while not working hard enough to finish all of our duties too fast. The job sucked, but it didn't require a high school diploma or even a GED, so I couldn't complain too much, I guess. Before you do the bathrooms in Fassler, George called out to me from inside the janitor's closet, next to the table where we took our lunch breaks. Shauna wants to see you. Shauna was the head custodian and the leader of the Ross Hall crew. She was older than me by more than 20 years and swore that she had been working as part of the janitorial staff since the day she was born. Got a slap on the ass and a mop for my first birthday, she liked to say. Tell me it's not paint again, I said. Orange this time, George said. A few weeks earlier, I'd walked into a classroom on the 4th floor of Ross Hall to empty the trash cans and found one of the walls covered in blue paint. There wasn't a design or a pattern, it just looked like someone had taken a paintbrush, dipped it into a can of paint, and then set about splattering it everywhere. Protecting the walls from any further non-university sanctioned paint jobs had somehow become my responsibility. Where is it, I asked. She said she'd meet you on the 3rd floor, George said, stretching like a cat and a lazy boy rather than an employee on the job. You're gonna take care of the bathrooms, I asked. Yeah, man, George said, easy peasy y con una sonrisa. That was his catchphrase. He told me that when he first started working here over 8 years earlier, he and Shauna had a different crew leader. On one of the days, the crew leader and George had to team up with the groundskeepers to chase a family of possums out of the building. He'd asked George where he was from. Mexico, George said. Ever think he'd be hunting down possums in America, the man asked. No, George said, adding that he was surprised by how often it happened. The man told him the staff propped the doors open during the summer because the air conditioning was spotty, and jokingly added that they should put possum corralling on the application as part of the job description. Hard work, George said, crouching down by one of the my kids laughing like they haven't heard this 1,000 times. Okay, yeah, they should put possum corralling in the application. Hard work, George said, crouching down by one of the traps he'd helped set up. The man shook his head and told George that when he was his age, he'd worked on a pig farm with his father. Now that was hard work, the man said. This here, he said, in a southern drawl made worse by the alcohol, this here's easy peasy lemon squeezy. And George had adopted the saying, giving it his own twist, easy peasy y con una sonrisa, or easy peasy and with a smile. Ever since then, anytime George had to do something he hated, cleaning up shit someone had smeared on the bathroom walls, remopping a hallway he just cleaned because a student dragged in mud, or shampooing the carpet in a classroom after someone had brought in a dog with fleas, he'd repeat his stupid saying and remind himself and the rest of us that things could always be worse. The door to the room on the 3rd floor where the paint had been spread on 2 of the walls this time had been blocked with 3 wet floor signs, the closest thing we had to crime scene tape. Fucking shit show, Shauna said when I walked in. You believe this? She said, waving at the walls, almost not talking to me. Oh yeah, I will not be editing for our audience. I'm sorry. I thought they were going to put up cameras, I said. According to Shauna, the school had been talking about upping their security for years. Yeah, she said, right after they gave me that raise. She put her hands on her hips and let out a huge sigh. Had to tell the chancellor, she said. She told the chancellor's office last time, too, and had received an email from the chancellor herself asking how something like this could have happened on our watch, as if it was somehow our responsibility to patrol the building after our shift. In the email, the chancellor asked if we knew of any missing keys, and Shauna said that we were more careful than that, but the chancellor had sent someone from Lock and Key Services to account for all of the keys in our possession anyway. And when everything checked out, her office sent an apology in the way of 2 dozen donuts and a coffee for each of us, with a passive-aggressive note that read, "To keep the staff well caffeinated and alert." "Are you getting fired?" I asked. "What? Hell no," Shauna said. "The day they fire me, the whole building will collapse." And she laughed. "No, this is worse," she said. "They want us to have our pictures taken so that they can post them on the school website." I didn't understand how this was the solution to the problem, but Shauna filled me in before I could ask, saying it was meant to put a face to the real victims of the crime. She caught the chancellor during her jog around campus, which she did every morning at 4:30. The chancellor had come up to the room, and within half an hour, her office had sent Shauna an email saying that they'd contacted one of the freelance school photographers and that each of us was expected to show up in our best outfit the next day. She said that we were also expected to talk with one of the school writers who was going to ask us questions about our background and hobbies so he could write a blurb to go along with our pictures. "All of that before the banks open?" I said. Shauna shrugged. "Money don't keep hours," she said. And I nodded. "I don't have any hobbies," I said. "Make something up," Shauna said. "Can't very well tell him you and George spend your free time impersonating Cheech and Cheech," she said. She turned to look at me. "Get it?" she seemed to want to ask. "Because you're Latino?" But she didn't. "All right," she said, signaling at the wall behind her. "Get to it." The next day, George showed up with an entire bottle of gel in his hair, and Shauna doubled over in laughter when she laid eyes on him. "You better hope they don't use a flash," she said, and cackled all the way up to the 6th and final floor of the building, where they were going to take our pictures. "Can you spell your first name for us?" the writer asked when it was my turn to sit down in the chair. I could tell that George and Shauna wanted to stick around, but they also didn't want to appear not busy, so they left after their pictures. "Santorio," I said, spelling it out. It was a strange name, even in Guatemala, where my parents are from. I'd asked why they'd given me this name, since it wasn't a family name or anything, and I'd asked if it was the male version of Santeria, but they said it wasn't. It was a combination of the words holy and river, so only good things would flow into and out of me. "Can you tell me a little bit about you?" the writer asked, as the photographer instructed me to raise my chin a little and tilt my head to the right. "I like to play guitar," I said, lying. "What kind of guitar do you have?" the writer asked, his pencil poised above his notepad. I hadn't thought that far ahead, so I said nothing. Pretended I hadn't heard the question. "Okay, how long have you been on the staff?" the writer asked, moving on. "Almost 5 months," I said. "A young buck," the writer said to the photographer, slapping his knee with his notepad. "Turn this way a little," the photographer said, pointing. "I joined right after my 23rd birthday," I said. The writer nodded and wrote this down. "You like working here?" the writer asked. The photographer pointed at his chin, instructing me to lift mine a little more. "Hold it right there," he said, and then pushed down on the shutter button. Thank you.
Let's have one more round for all 4 of our Camila and Melissa and Jared and Joanna, and thanks again to Flyleaf for hosting us. Just one more reminder that they have books for sale, and you're supporting them, you're supporting the store. So. And thank you all for coming. It was great to see you.